Hello YouTube, welcome back. This is the Haxton Knits podcast. I am primarily going to be talking to you about knitting. I also crochet, weave, spin, homebrew, and whatever else I get up to. I'm coming to you from my home in Okinawa, Japan. And I'm glad you're back. This is episode 2. Episode 2 is turning out to be a little bit harder than episode 1. I think I had a couple of drinks before episode 1, some liquid courage. And now that I'm starting episode 2, I find that I'm nervous. And also, I was surprised how many people in my real life actually watched this. I kind of had this image that, the knitters out in the ethos were going to watch this podcast and didn't think about the fact that once I posted it up on Instagram that my cousins and family members and friends were going to watch it too. So somehow that's making me a lot more nervous today. But that's okay, we're gonna push on, and if I find myself rambling or making any mistakes, I can always just edit that out, right? Yeah, no, there's very little editing. This is a low budget production here. You should see my setup today. So I have my iPhone mounted to my Swift, and then my Swift mounted to a piece of patio furniture so that I could make this work with no tripod. I did purchase a new microphone and lighting that's not here yet. It's coming in the mail, so hopefully in the next couple of weeks here we'll have a little better production quality. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. You guys don't care, right? Yeah, right. I think about the things that I like the best in other people's podcasts, and it's like good lighting, interesting things in the background, giveaways. That's what I like. I don't have any of those things yet, but we'll see how it goes. I did bring show notes today, so I'm going to try to stay on track. I want to do a from the comments section, but I think I'm going to save that for the end because I can see myself rambling quite a bit about some of the questions that came up. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned until after the knitting content is done. I did finish the Stephen West Starflake mystery knit along, and I'm going to show it to you now. So if you are participating and don't want to see it, look away, but I think I think it's safe to show it. And this is gorgeous. Okay, so off the needles. This is going to be really hard to show you by holding it up. I'll put some pictures up too that I took. I love this thing. It turned out great. First of all, this grew so much when I blocked it, which was exciting. I think that's the brioche in it. It just wants to grow, and it sits really well. Like something about the shape of it, it just kind of stays on your shoulder, and you don't have to fuss with it. It killed me not to make modifications to this. It's sort of my normal knitting style is I look at a pattern and I go, I don't want to do it that way. And I start making changes and wanting to add sections and add rows. And the whole time I'm like, well, I think I'm going to add this, I'm going to add that. And then I ended up not. And I'm really glad because it turned out great. It didn't need any modification. Just a beautiful pattern. I cannot wait for it to finally be warm or cool enough to actually wear something like this. It's still very hot here. We've had a couple of days where I thought, it feels like fall, I'm so excited, maybe it'll be sweater weather. Ha, yeah, right, there's no such thing as sweater weather. So hopefully soon I'll be able to wear some of my knitwear. I don't know when, never. There's no such thing as sweater weather in Okinawa. But this is gorgeous. I did turn my air conditioner off so I could film this, and I'm noticing right now that it's starting to make noise again, and I don't know why, so I'm going to fuss with this for just a second. In Japan, all of the air conditioners are remote controlled wall units, which is really cool. So hopefully this will shut up and you guys won't get so much noise. We'll see. Yes. Okay. And that's actually my only finished object. I feel like I've been kind of monogamous. I did want to show you the label for my yarn that I used for the knit along. This is the fiber seed. I don't think I did a good job of talking about this yarn on the last episode, but it's fiber seed. It says the fiber seed, we hand dye each hank of yarn. This small batch process ensures a balance and a balance of uniqueness and consistency. And I can't remember where I bought this yarn at. I think I think I bought this when I was in Alaska, but I could have bought it when I was in Florida. I don't know. I move a lot, and so these get a little muddled in my mind, but I bought a couple of seed packs, or what they called. So I got a red pack that had 4 colors of red. I got a stormy pack, which was shades of gray, and then I got 2 balls of matching yarn for those packs. And it took me forever to figure out what to do with them. So I was really excited to get those worked into this project. So we'll show you. Section 1 of the Mystery Knit Along starts with these little parallelograms, which you knit and then pick up and knit the next. And then goes on to garter ridges and then brioche. Oh yeah, I love it. I love this. I love how it came out. So moving on to works in progress, I have quite a few. I'm not normally a monogamous knitter. I usually have quite a few things going. As a result, I don't get things done very quickly. I usually have like 1 in the car that I work on only when I'm in the car, and 1 in my purse that I work on only when I'm in my purse, and 1 on the couch. So we'll pull these guys out. Last time I talked about the Nell sweater, and I am using, this is the Destination yarn, and the color is Coal Mine. So this is a fingering weight. It's merino, nylon, and stellina. And I bought this at Stitches United year before last. I'll talk about my experience there a little bit later. I have really bad luck with yarn festivals. I've been to a few smaller ones up in Alaska, like they do Fiber Fest or Forest Fest in Girdwood, and they have some small things for sale. And there was also one I went to up at the State Fairgrounds in Wasilla that was great. But the bigger yarn festivals, you know what, I'll just talk about it now. So 2 years ago, my husband and I decided we would go ahead and make the trip to the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. Is it Edinburgh or Edinburgh? I'm gonna say it wrong. That's okay. Anyway, Scotland. And we both got time off work and we were really excited to go. And then right at the last second, something happened with my husband's work and he could not go. And I told him, I'm gonna go without you. You know, I'm just gonna go. And he said, oh, please don't go to Scotland without me for the first time. So I just started looking around and I found there was another festival going on at the same time. And since I had the time off, I'd go. So I went by myself. I flew to Connecticut for Stitches United. And I had a friend who was gonna meet me there, and the weather turned out to be bad and her flight got snowed in. And so I ended up there by myself. And it was actually really great. It was really good. I was on night shift then too, so I was having I would go to things and then I would come home for lunch and just sleep for a while and then I would come back. So it worked out well. If I'd had someone with me, I think I would have been really exhausted the whole time. And then we were gonna go to the Edinburgh Yarn Festival again the next year, and I got picked up for something for work also and had to leave, and so we couldn't go. And we're gonna try again for 2020. So we'll see. It's gonna be quite a long flight coming from Japan. I feel a little silly flying from Japan to Scotland, but I mean, it would be the same as the US to Scotland, right? It'd be the same, I don't know. Anyway, so that's how I ended up at the Stitches United in Connecticut by myself. And I spent way too much money on yarn, way too much. But one of my goals was I wanted to find a black sparkly yarn to make a pullover with. And so this yarn just was ticking the box. It was exactly what I wanted. And I have made several swatches and started to knit sweaters several times, but for whatever reason, never followed through. So hopefully this time will be the lucky charm. My progress is hard to see because it's black, but oh yeah, you're not gonna be able to see anything. I have finished the yoke and gotten past the armholes. This pattern, it has a really cool use of slip stitches. So we'll show you, we'll see here if you can see. But it's used to add structure to the collar, and then also this sort of line right below the neckline right here. Oh yeah, you can't see any of that because this is dark yarn. But I am enjoying, I like the way it's coming out. I do wish I had bought the yarn that's used in the pattern and used that kind of white and blue yarn. It's just gorgeous. I'm probably gonna end up making another one of these in that yarn at some point. Hopefully I'll push through this and actually finish it and wear it. I have a feeling you're gonna see it several times on this show. And of course, this is living in my Mrs. Brown's bags. Mrs. Brown's bag? Here you go. I love this bag. I watch the Grocery Girls. I love them. I think you guys have figured this out by now. I watch a lot of podcasts. Like I said, I work at night, so when I have downtime, and I need quiet activities to keep my knitting in line. But also on the needles right now, living in this bag. So this is, Lizette's Armoire. I love this bag. First of all, it's Doctor Who, but then it also has these little embroidered sheep on it. So it's just, I love this bag a lot. I bought this bag when I was in Texas at a shop called Inskein. And in it is socks. This is the stripe tease pattern, pun intended. So this pattern was kind of fun. What you do is you, without giving, I mean, you can look at it and see what's going on here. You cast on the cuff and then you work stripes down. And so it's worked in little sections. And it's just a fun way to break up a yarn that's very busy. And this yarn is actually really busy. It's kind of cool. So this is Opal yarn. I did buy it here in Japan. I bought it over at Pandora House. So it's interesting. The label's in German and then the sticker on the label is in Japanese, which means I can't read anything. But what I have figured out is that it was inspired by a painting. So it shows these two people. I think these guys, come on, focus. Yeah, it's not gonna focus. That's all right. Anyway, so the colorway was inspired by this painting here. And they show the sock knit two ways. One kind of standard and the other, so one horizontal, one vertical. So you can see the differences in them. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting and cool. And I thought it would make the perfect pattern for the striped tease socks. So I have almost one done. And eventually I'll get around to the other one. Again, like I said, I'm a slow knitter with lots of projects going, so sometimes things take a long time to finish. So you remember last time I said I had this Woolstok yarn and it had all these colors, and I was just gonna abandon the colors and knit the May tunic top. Well, I didn't do that. I wanted to use the Woolstok yarn and the little color minis together. And so I'm doing this. Okay. This is gonna be a very, very simple shawl, but I'm doing just color stripes. And there's no pattern here. I'm just making this one up as I go. And I think it'll be great. It'll be just a big, squishy, soft, comfortable shawl, scarf, wrap eventually. It's not big enough to wrap around my neck yet. There you go. But yeah, no pattern there, just making that one up as I go. And I'm using a technique that I learned at that Stitches United class I took. I took several classes there. Actually, so when I started looking at classes, maybe I'm a little arrogant, but I thought, I'm a pretty good knitter. I've done a lot of techniques. I didn't think I was gonna find anything that I was really new or would educate me. And I was really wrong, super wrong. I ended up taking a bunch of classes and enjoying all of them and learning a lot in all of them. One of the classes I took was, ikat knitting, so it's I-K-A-T. I've been calling it ikat knitting for a really long time, and that was with Laura Bryant. She was teaching it, and I don't know why, but when I signed up for the class, it didn't click to me that Laura Bryant was the teacher for it. Like, I know who she is, but it just didn't click into place. And when we got to class, she had this big poster up, and it was a picture of one of her patterns that was published in Vogue Knitting in 2014. It was the reversible wrap. I'll try to put a picture up. But that pattern, something about the picture of that pattern caught my attention. Like, I remember that magazine, I remember looking at that picture, and so I got to the class and I saw that big picture up there and I was like, oh, I have that pattern. And I just had this total fangirl, like nerd out, starstruck moment when I realized I was taking a class with this famous knitwear designer. I think I probably embarrassed myself a little. She hopefully doesn't remember that, but I remember it. And several times throughout that festival, I was like, oh, I know who you are. And so that was really exciting. Hi guys, I'm just gonna throw this little segment in here. While I was reviewing my video and editing it, I realized I didn't tell you what ikat knitting is. So ikat knitting is a technique that was taken from weaving, where you the yarn is pre-dyed, so as you weave, the pattern will appear from the yarn. And in knitting, you can do that also. And so I'm gonna just throw in a bunch of pictures of some of Laura Bryant's patterns where she used this technique. And so basically, like, you'll take a yarn with a predictable repeat, so it's got, you know, a repeating pattern, and then you'll purposely knit in a way that makes that pattern appear in your knitting. And it's just really cool technique. So here are some pictures real quick, and then back to the show. I nerd out a lot and like fangirl a lot, especially in the comments. So I noticed in the comments below that Melissa from Knitting the Stash commented on my video and watched it, which just blew my mind. I don't know why. I was like super excited. So yeah, thanks for watching. It's very exciting. And speaking of, let's talk about that Knits in Translation knit along. So I showed you last time this book, and I showed you some very lovely patterns in it. I didn't knit any of those. I knit something else. I thought, let's go simple first. Let's take it easy, do something that I think I can do. Let me find you the color pattern in here. So I found these little hand warmers that were in here. Compared to what I showed you before, these are a little underwhelming, but this is them. And they were cute, and I said, oh, I can make those. I did make them, but I'm not impressed with my knitting in this case. I used way too big of a yarn, and so I was ending up doing a lot of modification and on the fly. So here they are. Well, here's one of them for you to see. Ta-da. It is not exciting. Like I said, I used too thick of a yarn. I didn't really want to go shopping for it. I just kind of wanted to experiment and see how it went. So this yarn I did buy here in Japan. I bought it at Pandora House. I have the labels. So this is Motohiro Uruguay wool, and it is a superwash wool. I don't know if you can see that there. These were the two labels. And here's the yarn. There's nothing wrong with this yarn. It's just kind of what you would expect from a craft store. It's a general workhorse yarn. It'll get the job done. I just can't say there's anything special or exciting about it. And it's super washed, so that's nice. I do want to try these again. It was a really cool kind of slip stitch technique where you knit like 3 rows and then you knit into a stitch several rows down and let it ladder down to make this sort of bubble shape. I think had I made these with the right size yarn, this would look a lot more interesting. So maybe I'll do that at another time. I am going to keep working on this. There was a cowl pattern in here that I just really love. And when I started to try to translate it, I was like, I can't figure this out. Look at this guy. Isn't it gorgeous? So yeah, we'll see. We'll keep working on that. It's kind of a fun knit along though. I need to work on my Japanese knitting. It has a lot of room to grow. I think a lot of you know the Japanese Stitch Bible book. I feel like that's a really popular book for Japanese knitting techniques. And I saw that it's available on my local library and that it's available on their app. So I can check out the ebook right onto my phone without going to the library. That's awesome. So if you haven't gone to your local library in a while, you should, and see if they have an app like that, because I've been listening to all my ebooks and reading and audiobooks through there. This drink is Vita Energy and it has these little gels in it. You see them? There's instructions on the back to shake up the can. And I think I translated this right. It basically says that the gel will be as thick as you want it depending on how hard you shake the can. So I shake the crap out of it. And it's still, it's a chewy drink, which is really weird. This is, I see this in Japan frequently actually. There's a grape juice that I like a lot that has like chunks of aloe in it too. No beer in the glass today. Future plans. Yep, future plans. I made the Zwerger sweater. But I knew I was coming to Japan. I just knew I was coming to Okinawa and I didn't want to make a wool sweater. So I decided I was going to make a linen t-shirt instead. And this is it here. So this is, the yarn is Queensland collection, Savannah. So it's silk and linen blend. And I love the way this turned out. It turned out great and it fit me really well initially. But then I forgot how much the linen grows and stretches and drapes. And now it is very large in the neckline. You know what? I'm gonna show you. I'll be right back. Here we are. So when I originally knit this fit very well, but now it barely stays on my shoulders. Let's see if we can get you to see better. There you go. So yes, like it a lot, but barely stays on the shoulders. So I want to do something about that. And so that's my next future plan, is to figure out how to salvage this sweater. So my thought process originally was to just kind of seam up a line right here on the shoulders, because the neckline, you know, the neckline's what I want to fix. But if I do that, I'm also going to make the armholes smaller, and I kind of like the way the armholes fit now. So like I said, I want to make the neckline smaller somehow. I originally thought that I would just kind of fold in and sew up a seam on the end of each shoulder, but that's gonna make my armhole small. So I think I am just gonna maybe straight down the back seam this. I don't know how it's gonna go. I am pretty confident with my seaming skills. I did a lot of it with, especially the second level of the Master Knitter program, you do a lot of seaming up of different stitch patterns. And I know I can make a pretty invisible seam, but I don't know about this guy, because I'm gonna have to do stockinette stitch, try to make this color work, line up nicely, and then this very complicated, well, not very complicated, but twisted stitches, lace, etc. And then the little cable section. So we'll see. We'll see when I've picked this thing up probably 4 or 5 times over the last 2 months, thinking I'm gonna get started and do this and haven't. So now I have to, right? I've told the YouTube world that I'm gonna do it. So that's it for my future plans. I don't currently have any other knitting planned. There are a couple of things that have been in my queue for a really long time that I'll probably get around to here. So now I'm just gonna kind of talk about life stuff for a little bit. So if you're done watching the knitting section, you know, if you don't want to stick around, thanks for watching. Come back next time, like and subscribe. Otherwise, let's get to talking from the comments. So the Nurse Cupcake. First of all, I love your name. Second of all, hold on. We're gonna shut off the noise. I'm not sure why, but I keep turning the air off so that we'll have good sound, and it keeps turning itself back on. And the main problem is probably that my remote's completely in Japanese. Whoever was here before kindly tried to make some translations and stuck him on here. But for some reason I turn it off, and then after a few minutes it turns back on. So for sound quality, we'll try to manage that. Anyway, the Nurse Cupcake is the cutest name ever, and I'm also a nurse, so I appreciate that name. She said, I would love to hear more about life in Alaska and Japan, and how do you find the knitting culture differs in places you live? So knitting culture, that's hard. I think the biggest determinant of knitting culture is temperature. So if you live in a place that's really, really cold, you just get more knitters. If you live in a place that's really hot, you get less. And I feel like as a result, there's less knitting culture and family and groups. Although I didn't find that true in Texas. The knitting scene in Texas is just very hearty and awesome and friendly and warm. I spent last summer there, and yeah, it was funny because I had just gotten to town. I was staying in San Antonio, and I had gone to one yarn shop. I went to Inskein, where I got this bag, and told them all about myself, and what they said, oh, well, you got to go check out the tinsmith's wife. So I made the drive up there, spent the whole day there knitting, talking, went out to lunch with a bunch of ladies there, and they said, oh, well, you got to go to Yarnivore. And walked into Yarnivore, and they already knew who I was. The word had already gotten around that I was in town and going to all the shops, and that was really exciting. And I, went on a little yarn crawl and went out to the Lucky You because they were celebrating their anniversary. Just really warm and welcoming for a person who was in transit there. I wasn't in Texas for very long. Alaska, what I found is there are a lot of people who really want to be self-sufficient and want to be creative and want to make their own clothes, and that lends well to the knitting culture. So definitely a hardy culture. I loved Far North Yarn Company up there. That was hands down my favorite knitting shop of anywhere I had been in the world. And I think what it was that I loved the most was just that you could pop in anytime, sit down at the table and knit, and just the cast of characters at the table were all so engaging and interesting and friendly and warm and welcoming. Here in Japan, I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about the knitting culture in Japan. Okinawa, of course, is a very small island, so it'd be like commenting on the knitting culture of Hawaii and attributing it to the whole island, or to the whole mainland. I see a lot more crocheters here. I don't know why. When I ask locals, if they're local yarn shops, if I ask about knitting, usually nobody knows what that is. If I ask about crochet, then they will. And that might be a translation issue. That might be me not knowing the language well enough. I do see a lot of more crochet, and then also like at the craft stores. You saw this book that I picked up was the Knit and Crochet series. And it was just tricky. There were a lot of crochet books and not a lot of knitting books. But I certainly see knitters about. I have not found a local yarn shop in Okinawa. There's just little craft stores, things like that. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully there are some, and maybe someone will watch this and tell me about some awesome store that I'm missing. Because I miss local yarn shops. I don't like having to order stuff. And the smaller craft stores, they're fine. They do okay. Like I said, most of the yarn is like the one I showed earlier. Superwash, acrylic, or wool, just plain wool. Pandora House did have a couple of other nicer stuff. Like I saw some blends, and they had sock yarn, like I showed in my striped Tease socks. I picked that up. Obviously that wasn't a Japanese yarn. Sheila Lawrence commented, she mentioned that Mina Phillips, who you guys probably all know as the knitting expat, she did some hand spun patterns or patterns designed for hand spun yarns. And you know, I remember watching her podcast and hearing her talk about how she was going to, and then somehow I missed those patterns. So I'll definitely go check those out. Knitting the Stash also commented about how she'd be interested in hearing more about the Master Knitter program, and I would be glad to do a whole episode on the Master Knitter program. Maybe that'll be next. So if you guys have questions, if that's a program that you're interested in or have specific questions about, I'd be glad to answer those. If you didn't watch the last episode, I did mention the Master Knitter program through the Knitting Guild Association, so tkga.org is where you can find them, and they have a 3-part correspondence course where you are working through the program and mailing your swatches and writing and technical questions in for review and getting feedback and working on a lot of different techniques. Each level's a little bit different, so I can talk about that more in depth on another episode. I had to do several projects for that too, like a sweater and a hat and some mittens and a vest. So yeah, maybe that'll be next episode. We'll take all the Master Knitter stuff out and answer any questions. So questions about Master Knitter program, leave them below or onto my Instagram page. That would be great. Local news. We had something sad. So since my last episode, Shuri Castle burned down. If you're not here, you probably don't know what Shuri Castle is, but Shuri Castle was built, I think, the 13th century. It is one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites here. The castle itself has been destroyed several times. I want to say 5 or 6 times by fire. World War II, the Japanese set up headquarters in and around Shuri Castle, and then the Americans shelled the castle for about 3 days straight. So in the 90s, there was a big restoration project started, and it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. I'll put in some pictures here of the last time I was at Shuri Castle, which was a couple of years ago, and probably some pictures of the fire, but it was pretty devastating fire. It looks like it burned everything down. They don't think it was any sort of foul play. It looks like it was electrical, but really sad. What was so interesting about Shuri Castle is that there are a lot of castle ruins around Okinawa, but this one is the only one where you can really tell what it looked like. You know, a lot of the other sites like the Uraso or the Nakagusuku, or I mean, there's a bunch. And I'm going to probably mess up the pronunciation of them anyway. But those places, you go to them and it's really just remnants of the castle wall or like a restored wall and, you know, some signs saying what was there. I'll throw in some pictures because I went to a few this week. But Shuri Castle, you could actually see what it looked like because they did this huge restoration and they did it really well. And so that it helps to go there and see that and then go to the other sites and you can better kind of picture and visualize what they would have looked like. It's always amazing to me how many castles are on this island because it's a small island. Like some of them are very close together and I don't know how they didn't just murder each other fighting for territory if they could afford to have a castle this close to the other one. But so that kind of inspired me to get out and do a little bit of sightseeing. As it is anytime you move, like when you first get there, you do all the sightseeing and then you sort of settle into your routine and stop. And I always find that when I move away, I wish I had gone to see more things. So I went to the Uraso Castle ruins, which is also the site of Hacksaw Ridge. So I think if you haven't seen that movie, Hacksaw Ridge was a big motion picture and a book centering around a conscientious objector who was in the military during World War II and did some heroic things during the Battle of Okinawa. And so I actually set out looking for Hacksaw Ridge because I was familiar with that. Came to the site and realized it was really the Uraso Castle ruins site. something that's really interesting about here in Okinawa is just how many layers of history there are everywhere. So, you know, the Arasu ruins, there's, you know, a tomb built in the 12th century, and then the big castle built in the 16th century, and then all the World War II stuff, and just on and on and on. It's just, there's a lot there. At this site, you know, I went and saw the tomb, and then I walked up the ridge, and there's this little sign, and it says, you know, this was called the Maeda Escarpment by the Japanese and called Hacksaw Ridge by the Americans, and was the site of a lot of battles. I'll put a picture here. You couldn't go in, but you could see the entrance to some of the tunnels that the Japanese dug under the castle during World War II and used for the fighting in the Battle of Okinawa. And I saw while I was there, there was a sign up that they had a museum open right now with artifacts they found, World War II related artifacts that were found during some of the renovation of the castle. All right, guys, I think that's it for today. I'm so glad you joined me, and I look forward to seeing you again in future episodes. Bye.